This is episode 12 of the Asking You Shall Receive podcast. I have a very good guest that I've been looking up to since about junior or sophomore year of high school. Even in college, my roommate and I, before going to football practice, we tune in to his Facebook lives and get some words of motivation. And honestly, I think if you haven't met this man or know what he's doing yet, I don't know where you've been. But our guest today is Mr. Titus Unlimited. He is a health and lifestyle coach and honestly a mentor. So thank you for coming on. Please introduce yourself and let's get into it.
Yeah, I guess you said more than I was gonna say. I'm just Titus Unlimited, John Titus, and yeah, I'm happy to be here.
I really want to get the chance to kind of hear your background and where all this has come from. You've had a journey and you've built yourself up to something quite impressive. And I really want to know where this all started.
Oh man, I am originally from West Africa, Liberia to be exact. Parents, mother was a businesswoman. She was actually a nurse first, and my father was a doctor. And then due to war, I came to the United States and went to college again, and I worked as a financial advisor for a little over a decade, and then went into business for myself, and then kind of fell fell backwards into the health thing after my mother passed away from cancer in like 2001. And so I started to be more concerned about health because my mother was a healthy woman, and my concern for what happened led me to discovering more about health, more about my health, more about what happened to her. And then a quest was then launched to try to spread awareness so it doesn't happen to anyone else unnecessarily, because it was unnecessary and basically based on the foods we eat. Now, as far as social media goes, my goal on social media is to try to educate and inspire people to do better. And that's why I share a complete person, not only just somebody just talking about health, but the mindset and all those different things that go into being a complete person, into being a complete man, a man of value, a man that actually can increase the value of the people around him just by being present and bringing sharing his gifts. And so that's what I do.
Perfect. Now, was there anything that made you want to go entrepreneurially? Were there issues in the area of financial advising, or you just kind of decided, I want to get out of the kind of workforce, or what do you think kind of made that shift?
Being a financial advisor, stockbroker, whatever, I worked for Morgan Stanley, Citigroup, so the money was good, but it was about fulfillment. I've never been. My dad kind of taught me and grown me, that life is more than just money. And I always hear my dad used to say, money's fickle. One day you can have all of it, the next day you can lose all of it to no fault of your own. But what actually isn't fickle is who you are as a person, what you bring, your actual value. And taking things like that into consideration, after a couple of years, I realized that fulfillment wasn't there. And then, other things happened in life. And I decided to make a change into something that was more fulfilling. And it was a winding road. At that point, I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew that that wasn't it. And on the quest for that thing, like I said, I fell into this, and it worked out well. I listened to what the universe was telling me and went with it.
Mm. Now, I mean, would you say your health and nutrition has always been tip top yourself, or was this kind of a journey for yourself as well, kind of getting into your best state physically, mentally, and of course what you're intaking as well in terms of nutrition?
Oh no, I was an athlete my whole life, but my nutrition prior to maybe 2000, 2001 was like the average person. So I know exactly what the average person goes through. And it was a
Mhm.
process of learning, or well, actually it was a process of unlearning and then relearning, educating myself that led me to having, better awareness and enlightenment on, you know, my diet and the standard American diet and the problem that most people face, and even the problem that led my mother to losing her life.
Mm. It's kind of scary to say it, but like you said, it's the standard American diet where the common American is not going to question really anything, whether it's in the grocery store or at the local restaurant or fast food place. I mean, what gives someone that opportunity to actually start to question things and not just kind of go around like everyone else?
Just asking yourself questions, taking a step back, taking a look at where we are as a society, asking yourself this, look at the people ahead of you, look at the people around you, and ask yourself, is their diet working for them? You know, stop looking at just the United States, look at the world, look at the health of the world, look at healthcare in the world. It's not the same. So then what's the problem? Okay, when you start asking yourself these questions, real questions, and you start even, I always tell people it starts with you. Question your own beliefs. Okay, why do you believe that? Is that true? Who says it's true? Have you checked it out to make sure it's true yourself? Okay, even though you look around and you see evidence everywhere outside of the United States that is not true, why do you keep following that? Okay, and when you start to ask yourself real questions about everything that's connected to your life, you know, you start to come up with answers. Okay, you start to come up with answers. The problem is that most people, on my page, you followed me for a long time. I try to educate people. Not, I don't just come in and say, don't eat this, don't eat that, don't do this, don't do that. I take people back to where it started. So when we go back to where it started, the people who constructed our society as it is,
Mm.
you know, somebody like John D. Rockefeller, people like Henry Ford, you know, people, they clearly said they don't want a country of thinkers. They want a country of workers. So think about that statement. I don't want a country of thinkers. I want a country of workers, right? So you have been conditioned, trained, and indoctrinated not to think, to just accept what you've been told so you can do a job. Okay? Period.
Mm.
Because somebody who, there's another quote, education makes a man incapable of being a slave. So you're not educated in the United States about anything. You're trained. You're not educated about your food. You're trained. You're not even educated about your political system. You're trained to believe that there are only two systems. Even though we look all over the world and we see, right? I mean, only two parties. Even though we look all over the world, we see the very United States going to other countries and having elections where there's 26 candidates. But here, we can only do two. Okay? And no matter how we look at it, you know, unless you just want to believe, right? Neither one is really working for you because both of them have stood right there and watched and allowed corporations to sell you toxic food that makes the United States not only the fattest nation, developed nation on the planet, but also the most diseased developed nation on the planet. 70% of Americans are on prescription drugs. 75% of Americans are overweight. 50% of Americans are obese. Almost 50% of children, well, right now, well, back in 1960 was 1% of children were obese. Now it's almost like 25, 30%. 1 in 3 children are obese. Is that a system that's working for you?
Mm.
I mean, those are just some simple numbers just to, you know, and once again, every single one of those numbers are 100% accurate. You can you can Google it in that 20 seconds and find that out. So then ask yourself, is that system working for you? You have a Centers of Disease Control that has allowed 70% of the nation to be diseased. Because if you're taking a prescription drug, that means you have a chronic disease. Is that working? Where's the alarm bells? Are any one of the two parties ringing the alarm bells that we're killing our children? Are any of the two parties ringing the alarm bells that we're overweight, obese? No, we're actually getting more acceptance to those things. Why? Because it's money. The average person who is overweight pays an additional $1,500 easily, easily in insurance a year. The average person who is on diabetic medication that takes insulin spends an additional $900 in insulin. Diabetes alone is a $110 billion business. Do you think they're really trying to solve that or increase their profits?
You said it yourself. In order to be alive, you have to constantly challenge yourself.
Mhm.
And I really do think it starts with that questioning. But I
Right.
also think an issue that is really coming around, and it's kind of scary today, is many people are kind of using social media as a crutch. They see individuals like you giving all this information, things like that. And when they see that from the screen, they're like, oh, it's easy for you to say you've been fit your whole life, or you've already been like that your whole life. And they kind of almost don't even give themselves the opportunity to do so. And it really comes down to that mentality, like you're saying. And I do want you to kind of touch on that phrase you have about, in order to be alive, you have to constantly challenge yourself, because I think that really ties into it.
Well, yeah, the phrase is, in order to be alive, you have to constantly grow.
Mm,
Okay. Growth is proof of life. Okay. It doesn't matter what the tree is in the world, it grows every single year. New leaves, new branches. When the moment a tree stops giving new branches, new leaves, growth in any shape, or form, it dies. Same thing with a human being. If you're not growing your sphere of knowledge, if you're not growing yourself, if you're not bringing life to every aspect of your being, that means that there are parts of you that are dying. Period. And so it is incumbent on you as a person, as a man, for me, right, to grow mentally, spiritually, and physically every single day. I have to do things that exercise and expand myself in all those facets of life. If not, then that means I start to die.
mm.
Some people are born, right, and they die at 25, but they don't bury themselves until 70. Because after a certain point in time, a lot of people stop growing. They stop experiencing anything new. They stop learning anything new. They only know what they know. Okay. There's an old saying we have, some people have 20 years experience and some people have 1 year's experience 20 times. Those people that have 1 year's experience 20 times died 20 years ago.
What do you think it is that makes people not want to do these things? And it's a process. I'm sure, like yourself, you didn't just all of a sudden start making these great recipes, these drinks, these supplements off the bat. It's a process. And I
Right.
really don't think many people embrace the process part of it, rather than, it's also part of society. Everyone thinks they can get the abs or shred the 15, 20 pounds in a week or on the 2 month program, when it's really process based and process oriented.
Right. So the process is very simple. The process starts with you looking at yourself and questioning yourself. That's it. It starts off with the questioning yourself. It starts off with your believing that there is something out there that is better. Okay. You may not know what it is. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how good I was going to get. I didn't know where this was going to lead, but I know I didn't want to be there. And I started to question myself about where I was and why I was there.
Hmm.
Okay. And when you actually legitimately ask yourself questions, when you legitimately task yourself just to get a little better, can I do better than this? Okay. Can I? What if I tried? Okay. What if I tried to do a little bit better? Okay. Is this the best I'm capable of? That's what I ask myself. Is this the best you got? That's it. Is this the best you got? Okay. Are you capable of more? Let's try. And once you start trying and you start expanding yourself, right? When you start questioning your beliefs, who has this belief worked for? Because it's not working for me so well. Can I change my mentality to a mentality that does work for me? What do I really believe? Okay, we were brought up to believe a lot of things, right? But have you actually checked out your beliefs? Have you actually questioned them in accordance to your actual reality or reality outside of yourself? Okay. And once you start to ask yourself these questions, that's what starts it off. And just a little bit of movement. Growth starts with you planting a seed. That's all it does. You plant that seed, that seed of, you know, is it possible? As opposed to when you talk to people, it's not possible. And that's what a lot of people do, to your previous comment. When people see it, the first thing they say, it's not possible. Why? Because you've been trained to believe it's not possible. Even though you see the possible around you all the time, we admire great all the time. But in that admiration of great, right, we're also taught to believe that we're not great. We're also taught to believe that we are just this. We're also taught to believe that we have limitations. Even when people say, think outside the box, what box? What box? The box that you created for yourself when you decided there were certain things that you were not able to do? That's the box. But what about all the people who are exactly like you, right? Who are doing it? But the box didn't exist for them. So that's basically it. You just start to question, and once you start to question, you realize that there's no real box, right? There are almost no limitations, right? And even if there are limitations, it's incumbent on you to push until you get to those limitations. And if you actually push wholeheartedly, you will find avenues. All right. So that's why I even had the name Titus Unlimited. I refuse to continue to allow myself to be limited by the things I have been told, by the things society had told me that I was supposed to do, that I was only capable of this, that certain things were not possible. And once I start to question it, I have I've definitely increased my capacity. I don't know. Maybe my limits do exist. I haven't reached them yet though. So I'll keep pushing until I do.
Hmm. I do want to touch on, because you have plenty of recipes, you have plenty of cleanses to get rid of the toxins in your body. This didn't just come off and come to your mind right from the start. How did you come to start figuring out all these things, whether it was a new recipe, a change in your nutrition, seeing areas where you were deficient, and also realizing there are toxins in your body that you wanted to start eliminating from many of those common foods that most people would almost consider healthy or okay to eat on a regular basis?
Well, it starts off first with me. It started off with me taking a look at my mother's diet. Okay, trying to find what was wrong with her diet. Okay, and then when you start to research and you start to find, even though she thought she was healthy, she was eating certain things. Right, there are a few things that are in her diet that was probably problematic.
Hmm.
Okay, then I started looking at my diet. And I first removed those things from my diet, and then I started looking at other things. And I looked at diets of other people around the world, right? And start seeing, you know, certain things that were exactly the same, right? And certain things that just didn't exist. Like take, for instance, when you look, you know, a common thing, 70% of people, 90% of people of color are lactose intolerant. I didn't know that. Did you know that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. But people say something like that and they say, well, that's not true. Okay, well, let's take a look. I'm from Africa, right? And I cannot think of a single dish in West African cuisine that is based in milk. Not a single one. If you go to China, I bet you cannot think of one single traditional Chinese dish that is based in milk. Not one. Now, these are cultures that have been around for thousands of years, right? So I'm sure there are new things that people are doing that might use some milk, but when we look at their traditional dishes, none of them are based in milk. Cheese is not a thing in Asia. Cheese is not a thing in Africa. We got cows, but we don't use the cheese. Why is that? Yeah, because somehow someone figured out a long time ago that people of color should not drink it because it's problematic for digestion with them. Period. And so when we start to look at certain things and we start to question the things like milk does the body good, well, where does that come from? All right. And then when you do a little research, you realize that the milk industry was making a lot of money during World War II, shipping off powdered milk to soldiers because, yeah, they would fortify with vitamins and stuff like that. And it was a quick and easy way to get nutrients to troops on the front line. All they needed was a little water, stir it, and drink it. Great. But when the war ended, that ended their profits. So what did they do? They lobbied the United States government to make sure that they could be included as a necessary food item for everyone. And so they pay till this day to remain recommended, even though doctors have come out multiple times and said, hey, it's not really that great for you, but it's about money. So when you learn that, and then you see some of the issues that people have with milk, like skin issues, like gut issues, like bloating, like the growth hormone in it that causes cancers, that feed your cancers, then you start to say, okay, maybe this isn't what I thought it was, right? Well, if that's a lie, then what else is a lie? And you see, once you start the process, I always tell people about enlightenment. Enlightenment, the process of enlightenment, at first you'll get really, really mad. All right. But then once you get over the part that you're mad, you're going to be more inquisitive and you're going to ask more questions and you're going to delve and go deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. And you'll find that a lot of what you think and have been taught and trained to do, right, were never for your benefit. It was for the benefit of people who make profits off of you and keep you exactly where they want you.
It's really terrifying because even as when I was little to where I am today, I've really seen the food pyramid constantly change to where it honestly is almost a payment period to be at the top of the food pyramid that they show to the common Americans and says, at the top of the pyramid, this is your healthiest, most nutritious foods. And many of the times, especially now today, they have things like cereal, processed foods at the very top, and they have things like red meat, like steaks, and other organic foods really towards the bottom. And like you said, most people don't even consider to question it. But aside from that, I believe it also starts into a routine as well. And I think kind of building a routine mentally, physically kind of leads you to change that nutrition part of your life as well. So kind of touch on that, because I'm sure you had to change some things in your routine to allow for better nutrition and taking the time to maybe make better food rather than just rushing to get the easiest meal.
Well, let's start with taking the time, okay? And this is something I say to people all the time. Name me one thing that is more important than your health and the food you put in your body. Name me one thing. Because it's not your family, it's not your kids, it's not your wife, it's not even your religion. And here's why. Because if you consistently pump yourself with the wrong things and you get sick, you're of no use to your family. As a matter of fact, you become now a burden. All right. Can't do anything for your kids because now your kids have to take care of you. Right. Your wife, now you're a burden to her. You're just a second, you're an additional child at that point. Okay. And you can't even go to church or whoever it is to serve your particular God. So there's nothing that's more important than that. Yet, it is one of the things that people know the least about. They take the word of people who literally make more money when you either consume more foods that by all stretch of the imagination is not good for you, and or they make more money when you are sick. Why wouldn't you know more about your food? Why wouldn't you know more about your health when that is singularly the most important thing? Because without it, sometimes the best thing that could happen to you is for you to die. Because imagine having to live with the sickness, with the illness, which is what happens to a lot of people. So, I can't think of anything that is more important than your health.
Precisely. And I do want to touch on one last thing in terms of nutrition. On the side of having these right energy levels so you can have the capabilities to be your best self, to serve your God, whether you are religious or not, and also reach your highest potential. I do want to touch on how do you go about doing your physical health and making sure you're pushing yourself each day, where many people think, just like we said, we don't have time to eat the right things. Many people say they don't have time to even take care of their body as well.
Well, I mean, that part is pretty much the same as the food. You want your body to serve you, right? I used to do retirement planning for people, and one of the most common recurring thoughts when I was sitting across from a lot of people, right, who had saved a lot of money and were concerned about their retirement and all that stuff like that. I would be sitting across from them and looking at them and like, I don't know why you're saving all this money because you ain't gonna make it.
Hmm.
You're not gonna make it. They have people so vested in saving money and retirement and this and that, and they're in the poorest of health. You're not going to make it. And if you do make it, half of your money is going to go to what? Just keeping you alive. Okay. And now it's a whole different conversation. And I say this all the time, right? Think about this. Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme running. Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme running worldwide. Why is that? You work from about 20, 21 years old, right? Right now, retirement age for Social Security is 67. By the time somebody like you gets there, who knows what it's going to be, if it's even around. All right. So let's assume 50 years, okay? Because it'll easily be 71. The average life expectancy of the average American is what, 75? So you pay into a system for 50 years to draw for four? Well, let's just say right now, seven. Does that sound right to you? No one questions it. People just do it. Okay. And what happens to most people? They get disabled or they die early. All right. We're not even going to talk about a lot, all the increase in death right now. Think about the million plus people that died during the COVID thing. What happened to a lot of those people who were 60 plus? They paid in for 40 years. Guess what happened to Social Security? Gone. Gone. All that money they paid in for 40 plus years, 12% of their income yearly, right? For 40 years, gone. Gone. So when I started to look at that, when I was looking at sitting across from people doing retirement planning, I'm like, you being sick, you dying early, that's the goal. That is the goal. If we go back to slavery, right? Slaves were worked until they could not work anymore. And then when the slave was no longer able to work, he was just now a burden because he could not produce. And for many of them, they were better off just killing them. Are we not doing the same thing in a different way? Work you to the bone, get you nice and sick, depending on pharmaceuticals. Within a year plus of being retired, what happens? They die. They die. Isn't that the pattern? Isn't that the pattern when you see 70% of a nation on prescription drugs? How long do you think those drugs are going to keep you alive, and in what condition? Especially when the drugs are overpriced, when the healthcare system is almost impossible. They're just working you to death and milking you for every dime you have in increased costs until you get to the grave. The system is doing exactly what it's designed to do. I always tell people, you are best and most useful to our system when you're sick and in debt. And actually being healthy in our system is one of the most rebellious things that you can do.
It's really mind-blowing to say that health is something almost rebellious when it really should be the main goal everyone is striving for. I do want to ask one other thing in terms of pushing yourself mentally. A lot of people are doing the ice bath journey, and I know you've done it yourself. You've kind of talked about the mental difficulties that comes with, and I know a lot of people are doing it today, and it's kind of the craze to do the ice bath and the health benefits of it, but I really think it does more help for your mental, really just as much as it does for your physical body in terms of recovery as well.
Yeah, like I said, anything that is harsh to the human body, right, makes you better. Like I said, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger. All right. And so there's a couple of things besides just the cold plunge, saunas, fasting, vigorous exercise, all those things build you not only physically but mentally. All right. But when you look at our society right now, our society is based on people living a very soft, unchallenged life. And challenges are what make people better, makes you stronger, makes you more resilient. Okay. And so I tell people seek challenges, seek to challenge yourself all the time. Because if you're seeking ease, you're not preparing yourself for life as it is. And when we look at our country, that's why we see people who struggle so much with some mental issues. Why? Because there is this notion in most people's minds that life should be easy, and life is not. When you look across the world at countries where people live through wars, famine, and abject poverty, right? Those are some of the strongest people mentally and physically. Why? Because they have been tested by life. Okay. Some people lose their entire minds here if their dog dies. So understanding life is about your perspective on life, right? And it's about your capacity to take what life throws at you. And life will throw difficulty at you. Life will throw difficulty at you. But our system trains people to be dependent, to be soft, to be easily broken, because that's how you have to be in order to be controlled. But at the same time, it's a double-edged sword, because then we create all this depression, anxiety, and all these other things around us.
Yes. One of my last two questions here. I know you have a talk coming up on men's mental health and kind of on that last statement as well. Just kind of give some details into that upcoming talk and what you guys are going to be covering. I know that's a really important topic today, and many of my listeners are young and in their 20s, my age as well. And we really believe on becoming the best versions of ourselves, and that requires that mental area, the physical area, the financial area, and the emotional area as well. That also comes with embracing those hardships, like you said. So please let us know about that talk coming up and kind of what you guys will be covering.
So yeah, I did a panel maybe a couple of weeks ago with those gentlemen, and it went really well. So we're doing an expanded one, part two, just talking about men's mental health and mental health in general. And if you look at the state of mental health in general in the United States, especially for men, a lot of guys are struggling. Okay. A lot of guys are struggling because we have a system that is designed that its goal is to break you down. Its goal is to weaken you. Is to get you to believing that you're less than. Its goal is actually to rob you of your masculinity. All right. Because when you rob a man of his masculinity, then he becomes confused, because that's a lot of your masculinity is innate, because you're not designed to behave and or think as a female would. All right. And when you start to do that, you will have issues, because it is against your actual nature. All right. And I always say, whenever you're confused, just look at nature. What do you think would happen, right, if a male lion was told to be more sensitive and come down off the hill and play with the kids, play with the cubs, and do some of these things here, right? How would that pride fare? How would the lion fare? Probably not that well. Okay. No one has to teach that male lion to do those things. It's innate. Believe it or not, there's a lot of things that are innate in men and women as well. And when we go contrary to that, right, we create a certain amount of discomfort and a certain amount of lack of fulfillment within ourselves, because that's not what we're designed to do. Right. And so, yeah, somebody can program you to be other than, right, but it's going to show up in different ways in your life, and it's going to cause a lot of discomfort. And that's what a lot of people are dealing with right now, because a lot of guys are being told that being masculine is toxic. There's nothing toxic about masculinity. As a matter of fact, only toxicity is allowed to exist in the absence of masculinity, because masculine people drive out toxic things, dangerous things. Danger is not allowed to exist in the presence of masculinity. Okay. But they want to tell you that masculinity itself is dangerous. It's amazing how masculinity is only dangerous in times of ease, but in times of war, that's when you want people to be masculine, right? Right. Here's something to note, right? And people say that when women don't have men around, right, they are forced to be more masculine. Their masculine comes out, right? Right?
Mhm.
Okay. But when men don't have women around, do their feminine come out? So that tells you that masculinity is the most necessary trait for survival. Okay. And in the absence of masculinity, even for women, they will assume masculine traits simply to survive. So why is it just because it seems to be socially cool right now that we're acting as if masculinity is somehow dangerous when it's actually necessary? So that's the things we're going to be talking about.
Perfect. And what day is that? And where can people find those details as well?
It's going to be the 24th of July, Monday, the 24th of July. And there are flyers being posted. It's going to be held at, I believe, the YMCA in Fort Lauderdale. And it's going to be posted. You can look on my page for it. I'll be posting about it, and I've already posted about it in my stories. And also, it's going to be on Dr. Delvina. That's her page as well. And then a whole host of other people.
I have one last question for you. I want to thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate the value and really the mindset and how we should be looking at many of these key areas of life. I do want to let people know to check out your page. There's tons of individuals who have come to see you and have achieved great results in terms of their health, their wealth, their well-being, and honestly, every area of life I've seen you transform for multitudes of people. I take some supplements of yours myself in terms of the sea moss, and it's great for digestion. So last but not least, you are Titus Unlimited, so I do need to know, man, what are your goals for the future, and what are you really looking to achieve and accomplish here in the future?
My goals, just continue expanding what I'm doing, bringing more awareness, increasing my value as a person so I can be more valuable to the people around me. And letting life take me where it will. Okay. And as far as the future, right? Doing everything I can continue doing everything I'm doing on a bigger scale, bringing, like I said, more awareness, building a bigger community of people who are not only conscious but enlightened, people who are educated about their health, people who are educated about themselves, people who are aware of what's going on around them, right? Because once we can create a big enough tribe of people, then we can actually bring real change, not only to ourselves, but everyone around us. So it's almost like spreading, like how we talk about spreading a virus, right? If I can get you to then spread it to 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 people, right? Imagine how that multiplies over the next 3 to 5 years. That's the goal. All right. That's the goal.
I hope this episode does enhance that ripple effect and the value you're providing. Last but not least, please let people know where they can find you, follow you, get a hold of some of these great supplements. I know you're cooking it up too. I know you got some recipes, drinks, man. So please let them know where they can get it all.
Very easy to find, man. TitusUnlimited.com, Titus Unlimited on Instagram, Facebook. Yeah, very easy to find. And yeah, like I said, I keep expanding my knowledge. I sit there and I research stuff every day. So I even found something new today that I'm going to share. So there you go. It's just Titus Unlimited. That's the easiest place to find me.
Perfect. Thank you for coming on. This was the Asking You Shall Receive podcast, episode 12. And thank you so much again.